It's Pyram King with an update to Legends of Barovia, an expanded campaign to Curse of Strahd. And this update, we're going to be talking about the Abbey. We're going to also be sharing the new free PDF guide, going over that as well. Before we get started, a huge shout out to my supporters. It is their support that allows me to make this content, including the free PDF guide. And as a special thank you to the supporters, they receive some additional bonus content, including artwork, voice acting, sound files, so much more. And I take all the content in the free PDF guide, I put it into a Foundry adventure module so they don't have to do any work, none of the lighting, none of the walling, the journal entries. I do all of that for you as a huge thank you. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link in the description down below. So let's go ahead and jump into this. We're going to be covering the PDF guide first. Now this PDF guide is free. There's a link in the description. So if you want to download and follow along, you can. And I want to first say that this is one of my favorite locations in all of Barovia. I really love this location. Unfortunately, Curse of Strahd doesn't do this location justice. I mean, there's so much interesting stuff here. You got this interesting abbot, you got the Mongrel folk, you've got Saint Markovia herself, this historical figure who is buried in the crypt of Ravenloft, but there's no meat on the bones. And what this guide does, or attempts to do, is really flesh this out and make this a wonderful experience. So we're going to go through some of the updates in the PDF guides. I'm going to explain some of the reasoning behind it, hopefully making this guide useful to you in your campaign. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about in the guide is the history. And one of the things that I feel is important for Dungeon Master, especially running Curse of Strahd, is not only to understand the location and the NPCs there, but to provide some context of why the things are the way they are in this location. Now, the Abbey is interesting. When the players get there, it's kind of abandoned except for these weird mongrel folks and this strange abbot there. Why? Where did all the monks and the sisters go? Who built this abbey? Well, this brief half page gives you a little history about the abbey. It was built in the year 84. Remember, the players' characters are in Barovia in the year 735. So it's been around for about 600 years. There's a decree of welcome here that kind of explains this and when it was built. So this gives the DM some context. Now, I believe this context is important for three reasons. It gives the DM a better understanding of the location. Other than just the details of the location of the NPC, it gives them some background to draw upon. It allows them to improvise on the fly better, and sometimes most importantly, it helps the DM answer those pesky questions that players always seem to have. Now, the next section of the PDF guide is a brief history timeline of the Abbey, but only at the moment in which Strahd comes to Barovia, which is around during the Great War, around 340. And in 351, he becomes the vampire. This talks about the Abbey had supported the knights during the Great War. Those are the Order of the Silver Dragon, the Knights of Argynvost. So this ties the Abbey into Argynvost. The Abbey was used as a hospital during the Great War. The Abbey became under siege by Strahd because he saw the Abbey aiding these knights as kind of traitors to him, and it was under siege. And then it became abandoned in the year 355. Now, the Mongrel folk arrive right around the year 400. We're going to talk about them and the changes we made to the Mongrel folk. And the Abbot arrives around the year 600. So this gives you the kind of that brief timeline from when the Great War in Strahd came to all the things that happened up to when the players arrive. The next part is about Saint Markovia, and she is an inspirational historical character throughout Barovia. The players, when they get to Ravenloft and go in the crypts, are going to find the crypt of Saint Markovia, and they're going to hear and obviously visit the Abbey of Saint Markovia. Well, who is this famous historical figure? So this gives you a brief outline of how she became a sister of the Abbey. She became the Blessed Sister because she had these magic healing abilities to heal the knights during the Great War. She also blessed the spring in Krusk, giving it some healing properties. She made the ultimate sacrifice standing up against Strahd, in which he defeated her, and she's buried into the crypt, and then her ascension to sainthood. Well, what's interesting is not only does this provide information for the DM to draw upon, there is an amazing player handout called the Prayer Book of Brother Valen, and here it is here. The players can find this in the Abbey. It's a prayer book belonging to a contemporary of Sister Markovia, and in his dying days, when the Abbey falls under siege at the end of the book, he inscribes in the book the rise and fall of Sister Markovia, and the fall of the Abbey. So this is a great player handout that really gives them context to this location. It describes who St. Markovia is. Why are there no more sisters or monks in this abbey? A great, amazing player handout, which I think the players will really like. It's one of my favorite handouts, by the way. The next one is about the Abbot, and the Abbot is such an amazing and interesting figure. Now, some of the questions, and this was a huge help from a lot of our supporters, and we talked about this as we created the playtest guide, was why is the Abbot there? And why is he creating this flesh golem for Strahd? Well, what we did was really flesh that out. He came to Barovia to find out what happened to this blessed sister with these magic healing properties, the blessed sister Markovia. And when he arrives, he finds the abbey abandoned, these strange creatures, the Mongrel folk, which we'll talk about in the abbey. And as he roams around Barovia and discovers what happened to Sister Markovia and the darkness over Barovia, he eventually meets Strahd. Now, during his time in Barovia, his moral compass becomes corrupted, as many people do under the shroud of the mist and the dark powers of Barovia. And when he meets the Lord of Barovia, Strahd shares with him that he has been on this centuries-long journey to find his lost true love, Tatiana. So what happens is the Abbot places empathy above his moral compass, and he empathizes with the Lord of Barovia, this person that has lost the person he's loved for centuries, searching for her. And if he believes he can create this flesh golem that can take the place and fill that void in Strahd's heart, perhaps it will also be of the greater good, because once Strahd's heart's restored, perhaps the darkness will lift over Barovia. So the single mission of this Abbot has been a way to mend Strahd's heart, not just to help Strahd, but he believes in this empathetic justification, that the ends justify the means, because if he heals Strahd's heart, he will also heal Barovia. That's what the Abbot believes, and so he's operating out of pure empathy. In addition, the Abbot has this talisman of serenity that creates this enchanting aura. We've got some information about that and how the players deal with this. So this gives you this kind of understanding who the Abbot is, also how he is also the caretaker to the Mongrel folk, and this unusual relationship that he has with Strahd, and why is he building this flesh golem. Next up, we do a brief background on the Mongrel folk, and this is something that we significantly changed. I didn't really think the Mongrel folk, as written, really kind of fit within the Abbey, and it really kind of makes the Abbot, you know, kind of this macabre bad guy. And instead, what we really wanted to do is weave more of the Strahd story into all of these locations. Now, one of the most desolate and horrible locations in Barovia is Brez, a once vibrant village, which Strahd decimated and cursed with his wrath, which we will learn about in the Brez guide. But the people of Brez were also cursed. Strahd cursed the people of Brez, and they became amalgamations of animal parts and extra eyes and humanoid parts and extra appendages. And obviously they fled the swamps of Brez, never being accepted, obviously, in any of the human villages of Vallaki, Kresk, or Barovia, because of people saying, oh, these are cursed people and they're grotesque. They eventually found the abandoned abbey, which everybody avoided because they thought it was cursed by Strahd. They found this as their sanctuary. So the Mongrel folk are the cursed descendants of the villagers of Brez. So all of that's been fleshed out here to give them more context in here. And we'll talk about how the Mongrel folk are incorporated into the Abbey. It's something I really wanted to change the kind of atmosphere of the Abbey a little bit. Now, next up, we added another NPC group to the Abbey, and that's the Kenu. There's a small enclave of 3 of them living in the loft of the Abbey. Now, as you may know from the Fae quest, Strahd destroys the Fae shrines, hunts down the Fae. The Keeper of the Feather, the Were-Ravens, not only are a secret spy network that worked with Argynvost, but they also worked with the Fae, and they hid the green gem, which is hidden in the Wizards of Wine, which obviously those are were-ravens. So they've been hiding this gem from Strahd. Well, Strahd had captured centuries ago a couple of these were-ravens to torture them to find out where this gem was hidden. The were-ravens never gave up the information, so he cursed the were-ravens that he tortured and captured into this kind of phase that are not totally human and they're not totally raven. They're these kenu, which are half raven, half humanoid. It's a curse. So they could no longer hide from him. And they slowly devolved their ability to speak, so they now can only mimic human speech. We've got a really interesting encounter with them. This, again, ties the Abbey into both the were-ravens and the Keeper of the Feathers, also into the Wizards of Wine, and it also ties into that entire Fey quest and Strahd's relationship with the were-ravens and that green gem. Really enjoy the were-ravens in the Kenku here. Now, we added this optional encounter on the switchback road up to the Abbey. This is another way of introducing the wolf den. So as the players are ascending, they're going to run into two werewolves attacking a third werewolf, or what appears to be a third werewolf. As they approach, the two werewolves run off, and that injured werewolf is not a werewolf at all, but a warg. And the warg had come to warn the Abbot, of a pending werewolf attack on Kresk. The warg, realizing as a warg that he probably would not be welcomed into Kresk, the Burgermeister or whoever would probably kill him, thinking he was a werewolf, but knowing that the Abbot's taking care of the Mongrel folk and there's also the Kenku there, he thought the Abbot might be more receptive to this warning. So I have an optional werewolf attack that can be run either off screen at Kresk, or if you want to run a battle at Kresk, at the walls of Kresk, between the werewolves and the guards and the archers and your players at Kresk, I have that all written in here as well. Optionally, if you want to run the expanded guide to the Warg Cave, that's a faction of Warg that are against the werewolves. This also includes an introduction to run that side quest to the Warg Cave. So this is all optional, but it's included, and it also is another element or way of introducing that wolf den through going up to the Abbey. Now, when we get up to the Abbey itself, one of the locations I really enjoyed and included two puzzles in here was in the graveyard. The first puzzle in the graveyard is the grave of Sister Constance, and there's an anagram written on the back of the grave. The players can get clues. Clues come in two forms. There's a whisper that's going on in the Abbey that solves the anagram. Also in the book Legends of Laganda, which the players will find in the Abbey library, also has a clue on how to solve this puzzle. Now, when they solve this anagram, the gravestone opens up and reveals the holy symbol of the sun, or holy symbol of Ravenkind, which is one of the quest items in there. So that's all written in here to run that anagram puzzle. The next puzzle I really enjoy. It's a famous inductive reasoning puzzle called Petals Around the Roses. It's a D6 puzzle game where you roll 6 dice and the players try to solve this puzzle. The entire description of the puzzle is in here, as well as some links back to the history of who created this puzzle. Actually, Bill Gates famously solved this puzzle. It became a famous inductive reasoning puzzle. So there's these stone dice on Tasha's crypt. When you solve the puzzle, the crypt opens up, revealing both the Ring of Regeneration and the Habsburg Kresk ring, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's another magical ring that adds more to the lore of Barovia. Now, when we get to the Abbey, what I really wanted to do, rather than it just being a bunch of macabre possible combat encounters with the Mongrel folk, which the players can continue to attack them if they want, I really wanted to show what a day in the life of the Mongrel folk was. So I've incorporated a lot of these little vignettes in which they run into Mongrel folk either gardening in the garden or in the courtyard or in the various rooms with little bits of stories. Some of them are social encounters. Some of them could be things the players could find. Some of them could even be a combat encounter. So those are sprinkled throughout this guide, including the well, the chicken sheds. There's a goat at the tethering post that can kick the players. So remember, these are descendants, humanoids that have been disformed, cursed by Strahd, trying to live what resembles some kind of existence in the Abbey here. Now, one of the most important locations in the Abbey is the scene with the Abbot and the flesh golem here, and that's in the main hall. And I have some notes on playing this kind of passive, empathetic Abbot in there to give you some ideas on how to role play them here. I also suggested some ambient music to be running in the Abbey, and I suggested Johann Sebastian Bach's cello suite because it's kind of somber. It's just a single cello playing. It's very faint in the background, and the Abbot has cast a spell of this music to play over the Abbey to calm the Mongrel folk, to create some serenity, some peace. It also keeps the flesh golem up on the wall kind of in check. The other thing here is he will answer the questions of the players, like, who is this flesh golem? And we have this beautiful token, by the way. These tokens are made by Tisu, huge thanks to him. And by the way, the guide is edited by Jesse Winter. We had the flesh golem here. We've introduced that something borrowed in here for that, if you want to look for the bridal gown. He explains the history of the Mongrel folk. I found them here, they're cursed. The cursed descendants of Brez, and they're my flock. He's taking care of them. He cares for them. He describes the flesh golem on the wall. Now, if you're running the quest from Kresk with the missing bodies out of the graveyard, if they ask him, he'll tell them that he has sent the Mongrel folk to go find some body parts to build his flesh golem. And he didn't know where they went. He apologizes. He had no idea that they went to consecrated ground and dug up these graves, and so he apologized and would probably like to rectify that matter and apologize to the Burgermeister of Kresk. Now, one of the things that we've incorporated, and this was inspired by Steve from Lunch Break Heroes, was the Abbot performing an exorcism if Irina's with the party to exorcise out Tatiana's soul. And he has this wondrous item called the soul vial, which he can capture her soul in and then place it into his flesh golem. That's what he wants to do. To complete the transformation of the flesh golem, he needs to put the soul of Tatiana, which is interesting about the flesh golem. I want to point out, she has white hair. Her hair will change the color of the soul that she's imbued with. So she is imbued with Tatiana's soul. Her hair will turn to red. And you'll notice that the flesh golem has this very, very similar look to Irina, who also has a similar look to Tatiana. Now, how do you role play this, and how does this happen? I wanted to provide several different options, whether Irina makes up her own mind or she puts her faith in the party. The party can try to do a persuasion check to convince Irina. The Abbot, there's also some checks to see if the Abbot's telling the truth, as well as what happens if Irina and the party decide not to let this happen. So all of those are in there. So when you're running this campaign, hopefully, or the scene, hopefully there's some stuff in there that gives you enough ideas of the dynamic that's going on between the party and the Abbot and how you want to run it, because it's going to be a very interesting and serious moment. Now, one of the things that we did add, and some of this, huge thanks to our member community that really helped me flesh this out more, is I felt this was a great opportunity as a possible reveal of who Vasily von Holtz is. Now, if you're running Vasily von Holtz in your campaign, who is Strahd, who's most likely befriended the party, there's two ways this is a great place to reveal him. Because obviously Strahd is coming to check on the progress of the flesh golem by the Abbot. But Strahd doesn't arrive at the Abbot as Strahd. He arrives as Vasily von Holtz, Strahd in disguise, as he travels throughout the land because he doesn't want people to recognize him as Strahd. So in a very simple way, you can just, the Abbot can reveal that Vasily is Strahd. Well, Strahd comes to visit. Of course, he doesn't visit as Strahd. He comes in his persona of the young, charismatic noble from Kresk, from Vallaki, Vasily von Holtz. But optionally, and some of our players or supporters had actually done this, Vasily arrives at the Abbey. And when he sees the party, he goes, "I came here to find you. I have something to give you. It's a matter of private concern." And when he's there, the Abbot says, "Oh, Vasily, you've arrived. I'd like to show you the flesh golem." Now, when you're role-playing this, Vasily's very polite to the eccentric Abbot, and perhaps the party, the players, should say, "Oh, Vasily's just being polite to the Abbot," because the Abbot's kind of this strange eccentric character. And then when the abbot's done showing the flesh golem, Vasily turns to the party, goes, I have some pressing matters to attend to, but I need to speak with you in private, a more intimate affair of some importance. And he hands the players an envelope and then leaves the Abbey. And that envelope is Strahd's dinner invitation, which we have right here. So when the players open this up, it's an invitation to go to Ravenloft to have dinner with Strahd. Now, the players might not connect that Vasily is Strahd. So as they're reading this, perhaps the abbot goes, oh, how nice. Strahd invited you to dinner. And the players might be confused. And it's like, well, of course Vasily is Strahd. How do you think he travels around Barovia? He doesn't travel around as Strahd. He travels around as Vasily in disguise. So this is a great reveal. Some of my players ran this and said it was just a shocking reveal, and it was a great way of introducing the invitation to Ravenloft, at the same time making a shocking reveal that Vasily von Holtz is Strahd. So, and it's obviously something to talk about when the players are at dinner with Strahd. It's like, oh my God, you're Vasily, holy crap. So it'd be a really good revelation, but also makes for some interesting dinner conversation at Castle Ravenloft. Now, the Area 15, which is all those rooms in the Abbey, are all, again, little vignettes that I set up with the Mongrel folk. Sometimes it can be a social encounter. Sometimes it can be they have some particular item. Sometimes they're sharing a little bit of clues. But I really wanted to create this day in the life of the Mongrel folk. Of course, you can run these as combat encounters. If the Mongrel folk are pressed up against the wall, they will come out fighting if they feel threatened in there as well. Now, hold on, my cat's walking across my keyboard. Then we have the wine cellar, but then we with Cloven Bellevue, but we also have that loft, and we talked about the Kenku up here. Now, the Kenku is going to be a fun role-playing moment because the Kenku can only mimic things or repeat things that they have read. Now, what you'll find up there in the loft is a kind of tattered old version of the Fanes of Barovia, which has part of that story of the were-ravens in there. So they can recite those lines from that book, and they'll say, green gem, green gem. They will, in probably some kind of pantomime, interesting role-playing moment, try to direct the players towards the Wizards of Wine with the green gem. So this is a way of connecting the Abbey, providing clues about the green gem, and connecting it to the Wizards of Wine. Now, when we get to the upstairs of the Abbey, we have the barracks. In the barracks, the players will find some belongings to Esmeralda there. If the players had met Esmeralda already at the Wizard's Tower, if not, they're going to find her belongings here in the barracks room. And we changed area S20 to the Abbey Library. Now, the players can go to the Abbey Library, and this could be their first encounter with Esmeralda. She's there studying over some books, and you can create this introduction at this moment if you haven't already. But what's really important here is there's 3 important books that provide not only some lore, but some important clues to the Abbey and to finding certain things. So again, I mentioned Brother Valen's prayer book is here, which gives you the history and the background of what happened to the Abbey by Strahd in the history of St. Markovia, because they're going to find St. Markovia's crypt in Ravenloft. In addition, there's the book Legends of Lagonda, who is a female knight and was the adopted daughter of Lord Argynvost. And this is her brief story. And she is the one that had the holy symbol of the sun, or the symbol of Ravenkind. And she used that to defeat the undead during the Great War. And there is a clue in here about the what the anagram is that will solve the puzzle on the back of Sister Constance's crypt. So this is a brief, couple of page story about the Legends of Lagonda, which is really, really a nice story, kind of a sad story as well, about her life and her service to her father and to the Abbey. Additionally, up there you will find the Lords of Barovia. This book gives you the history of all the Lords of Barovia up to Strahd, and there's some tidbits and information about Tasha von Habsburg, who used to be a sister of the Abbey that married that became the Countess of Barovia. So all of that lore in here ties together, which gives you some history about who she is that's buried in that crypt as well. So it's a really interesting location, some great player handouts here. By the way, these player handouts, you can download them for free on our Ko-fi shop. They're also linked here in the free PDF guide for you to download them. Now, next up we have the Haunted Hospital. In the area S21, area S23 and S24, there are going to be these vision scenes. In this particular one, the players, this was the hospital used to take care of the knights during the Great War. All these beds at one time had knights, and the sisters and the monks of the Abbey would be taking care of these knights. And these knights were the Order of the Silver Dragon, that are now obviously the Revenants in Argynvost Hole. So the players enter this, they're going to have this vision, this scene of these ghostly spiritual knights laying there, and the sisters and abbots, sisters and brothers taking care of them. And it's also going to be a visual scene where they're going to see and know who Sister Markovia is taking care of them. It's a powerful moving scene. We've got that here. S22 is the room where the abbot is conducting and creating his flesh golem. Now, what we also included here is the optional special event from Curse of Strahd, which is something old. You'd replace the body of the young boy, the young girl. Remember in Kresk, the Burgermeister's daughter, young daughter, was killed by a werewolf. They buried her there. Mongrel folk dug her up along with other bodies from the grave to build the flesh golem. Well, her whole body, she was too young to use as a flesh golem, so she's still there. If you want to run that something old encounter where the abbot can bring her back from the dead or raise her from the dead, if you're running that quest line, that's optionally in here as well. And the last two locations are the nursery and the morgue. And in the nursery, there's another visual scene, that's S23, where Tasha, Countess Tasha, arrives. This is during the Great War, right towards the end, with her daughter, Contessa Sarah, who's about to give birth to the last male heir of the Habsburg line. Now, Lord Habsburg has been killed in the Great War. His two sons are being killed. Obviously, Lord Strahd, Strahd at the time, Prince Strahd, is winning that war. And so they come to the Abbey so she can give birth in secret, and she turns over her child to Sister Markovia to take care of as the last remaining heir, proper heir to Barovia before Strahd takes power. So that scene, that moving scene, happens in this room. Again, it's chronicled not only in the visual scene, but it's chronicled both in the prayer book of Brother Valen and in the Lords of Barovia. And then S24 will be another scene in the morgue where the players' characters will see the spirits of all the dead knights, and they're being covered waiting for burial in the graveyard in here. And when that scene dissipates, they're going to see the were-raven, or a raven, not knowing it's a were-raven, sitting in the window. Now, this is an opportune time and a safe time to wrap up that session where the players get to speak to the were-raven. Perhaps the players have picked up some clues from the kenu about the green gem, the wizards of the wine. If the party is of friends with the keepers of the feathers, this is an opportune time to maybe share some information that's been happening throughout Barovia. The keeper of the feathers via this were-raven shares that information, or they can exchange some information here, kind of get a better lay of the land. If you are running Muriel Venshaw, the Master of Feathers, this would be a great time for her to arrive and maybe share some vital information that's happened. So that covers the PDF guide. Let's jump now into some of the things that we've added for the updated new release for Foundry of the Abbey. So let me close this. There we go. So we created a lot of Theater of the Mind maps. I love incorporating Theater of the Mind maps with the battle maps. We got a lovely one here of the Abbey. I'm going to show you the Theater of the Mind maps first. We have the attic here with the kenu, the courtyard scene. We have the garden, the graveyard here with the dead trust hymn, that anagram the players have to solve. The library with Esmeralda, the main hall where they're visiting the abbot. We also have two different rooms in the Abbey if you want to run those vignettes with the Mongrel folks. And we have the wine cellar. Now there's two special locations, one with Monk's Act of tile triggers and then Tasha's Crypt. I want to show you how to run that puzzle for Tasha's Crypt. So when they're at Tasha's Crypt, you've got this scene here with these tiles. And let's bring it up and set it up first. So we open up Tasha's crypt, and they see the crypt, and there's these stones in here, and we're going to organize these stones just like it is in the picture here, so you can read the script correctly. And what you're going to do is in the items directory here, you have the stone roses. So it's 613. So you're just going to grab the 6 and the 1 and the 3. And then you're going to grab the 2, 3, and 4. So we got 2, 3, and 4. And you can describe to the players that Tasha sees 4 petals around the rose. Now I know how to solve this problem, so I can see the 4 petals around the rose, but your players won't. Now the players have to figure out why Tasha's crypt says Tasha sees 4 petals around the rose. They see these 6 roses, they see these 6 stone dice. If they try to guess what it is and they guess wrong, what you're going to do is you're going to roll 66. I'll do that right now. And we have, and you're going to change the petals. We have 516, 422. And so you're just going to go in here and click on these, delete them, and change to the new roll. And I'll tell you what it is. So it's 516. So I'll just grab a 5, a 1, and a 6. And the next one is, what was it? 422. So we grab 4, 2, and 2. And the script on the crypt magically changes and says, Tasha now sees 4 petals around the rose. Now I know how to solve the puzzle. And they're going to go, how does Tasha see 4 petals around the rose with these dice? If they guess it wrong again, we'll just do it one more time so I can show you. You're going to roll the dice again. Roll R, 6d6. We're going to delete these because each of the dice change. And we have 663, 414. 663, 414. So let's put this in. 663. So the stone dice magically changed to 663. I think it was 663. Is that correct? 414. 414. And as they change, Tasha's script changes. It says Tasha sees 2 petals around the rose. Now I know how to solve this puzzle. And the players are going to go, why did it say Tasha sees 2 petals around the rose? So the players have to solve the problem. Once they've solved it, they get it, the crypt opens up, reveals the Ring of Regeneration and the Habsburg Ring, which is a pretty cool bonus attack ring in there. So it's a fun inductive reasoning puzzle. If your players like puzzles, this is a fun one to include in here, and this is how I would run it in Foundry. I like this puzzle for 2 reasons. Number 1, it involves dice, and so it makes it very easy to run this puzzle if you're playing in person, and I've made this really, really simple for you to run in Foundry. Now, the one thing that I did change in Update was the hospital, and I really wanted this hospital to be an important scene. We have the book, the Brother Valen's prayer book, which the players can read and get an idea of what happened to the Abbey, the knights here being taken care of, and who Sister Markovia was. But the visualization of this particular scene I thought was really important, and I wanted to incorporate it with Monk's active tile triggers. So when you bring the player tokens into this scene, they're going to see the haunted hospital, the hospital room with all these old beds in it, and you can describe it. There's some text here to describe the scene here, and it describes the scene here. But I wanted to do it with Monk's active tile trigger. So you click with the characters area in here, you hit start. It will also bring up some text the players can read, or you could read it to the players. It's up to you. And you click start. Oh, let me click on this. You hit start. And all of a sudden this light emits and says, ghosts materialize, injured knights occupying the beds while being attended to by sisters and monks who rush about, tirelessly tending to the wounded during the Great War centuries past. You hear the echoes of prayers and the cries of agony and the pleas of desperation. 2 apparitions, both sisters of the Abbey, enter arm in arm. They radiate serene aura, and their smiles offer solace to the wounded. In unison, they raise their hands, causing this blazing, blinding light that obscures your vision. And just as quickly as the brightness of this brilliant recedes, there's the light, their names materialize in your mind. You see they seem familiar to you. It's Sister Markovia and Sister Constance. The image now changes, and only Sister Markovia and Sister Constance remain. Now standing in the Abbey's graveyard, Sister Markovia digs a grave, while Sister Constance turns her gaze towards you. Sorrow etches across her face as the spirits ascend from the freshly dug graves, rising towards the sky. The once clear sky now darkens, and the spirits become trapped beneath this shadowed expanse of eternally captive of Barovia. The message conveyed by Sister Markovia and Sister Constance is clear. The souls of Barovia are forever ensnared in the accursed land. So this not only connects Sister Markovia and Sister Constance to this location and the importance of who they were, but also this spiritual image that the players see, this sad image, shows the souls of these dying knights, these dead knights, being trapped in Barovia, and it explains why the many Barovians are born without souls. Well, that's it for the PDF guide and the update to the Foundry Adventure module. We do also have some beautiful battle maps by DM Andy here. They have all the teleporting links using Monk's active tile triggers in here as well. So we really hope you enjoy this. If you do, please click the like button. Please subscribe. It lets me know that you like this content. It also helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link in the description below. And a huge, huge special thank you to all of my legendary supporters.